Big time fight coming up on our UFC 274 main card at lightweight. We have the former 12 fight in a row winner, El Cucuy Tony Ferguson, taking on the former 3-time Bellator Lightweight champ, Iron Michael Chandler. For Tony Ferguson, I want to stress the importance of that 12-fight win streak because we've only seen win streaks one fight longer in the UFC. Listen, John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, who else? Habib, they had 13-fight win streak. GSP had a 13-fight win streak. Like, we haven't seen many guys or fighters in general have win streaks that long before, and that is the list and the type of air that Tony Ferguson was in. Now, again, he has lost 3 in a row. Justin Gaethje in there. Then you have Beneil Dariush. You also have Charles Oliveira. All of those 3 kind of going in different ways except for the last 2, because realistically, you look at it in the fight against Justin Gaethje, blood and guts, absolutely an amazing fight, and it's Gaethje just with an accumulation of damage. It's the reason that got him to the dance. He's able to get that win over Ferguson and really, really pour it on him. And then you look at the last 2 fights, the Charles Oliveira fight where in the first round, Oliveira is able to get 3 minutes and 35 seconds of control. Second round, 4 minutes and 5 seconds of control. Third round, 3 minutes, 59 seconds of control. Was the book out on Tony Ferguson after that one? Because Beneil Dariush goes out. First round, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Second round, 4 minutes and 4 seconds. Third round, 4 minutes and 31 seconds of control time.
This was Tony Ferguson's arm when he fought Charles Oliveira. It wasn't just bent back in an armbar. I thought his arm was getting snapped off. Like, remember when Habib fought Michael Johnson? And Joe Rogan's like, please, for the love of God, Michael Johnson, tap. He's going to break your arm. That was the level of armbar that Tony Ferguson was put into. And he still somehow had, like, the heart to be like, yeah, I'm cool with basically losing my right arm for the rest of this fight. Just Tony Ferguson, win, lose, or draw, isn't going to give up on himself.
No, and it's crazy to see that. And again, Ferguson at this point in his career is obviously a different fighter than he was 3 or 4 years ago. But even at 38, it'll be interesting to see what version we do get of him, considering the fight against Beneil Dariush was 11 months ago. And for Michael Chandler, again, this is a guy that made his UFC debut a year and 3 months ago. Performance of the night bonus and a title shot earned off his victory over Dan Hooker. We all know that overhand. A loss to Charles Oliveira about 11 months ago where that was a crazy fight. I mean, he almost had Oliveira finished in the first round. And then his last fight against Justin Gaethje about 5 months ago, a fight of the year. And we're going to talk a lot about Justin Gaethje because he's arguably had 3 fight of the years since he's been with UFC, debuting in 2017. But Michael Chandler, you might have thought, okay, well, this guy's like late in his career. He's coming over into the UFC. What kind of an impact can he make now? Because even back in 2019, he got finished pretty quickly by Patricio Pitbull, who's once again your Bellator featherweight champ. But I look at this guy as Michael Chandler. Yes, I know he just turned 36 years old last week. But to me, it still feels like he still has something left in the tank against these top 15 guys at lightweight.
I agree with that 100%. It just feels like his level of competition has improved over time because he was beating good guys in Bellator. I'm not here to tell you he wasn't. But after like the Eddie Alvarez, Will Brooks sort of category in Bellator, he was fighting guys who, for the most part, you felt like he was going to be able to beat before the fight happened. I know he lost to Brent Primus. There was that weird nerve injury. But if you watch the rematch of their fight, you can kind of see how that first fight was probably going to go. Michael Chandler kind of Habibs him, just gets on top of him, ground and pounds him pretty much for 25 minutes, wins a very dominant decision win over him in the rematch. But I just feel like the last 2 guys who he's fought in Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira, well, they're fighting for the UFC title. They are very, very good at the sport. But Chandler made a great account of himself in both of those performances. Like you said, had Charles Oliveira in all sorts of trouble in the first round of his fight. But let's kind of be fair to Oliveira. The fight doesn't start until he gets dropped and gets back up to his feet. That's when Charles Oliveira really enters his own matrix. But for Chandler, he still has the explosion that he had pre-UFC. He still has incredible punching power. He's just a really interesting fighter because he's so offensively oriented. And I do feel like against these upper echelon strikers, I know Gaethje and Oliveira strike in a very different way, and trust me, we have many minutes worth of that to talk about later on, but they're still very technical with the way that they strike. Gaethje was able to drop Michael Chandler with a beautifully placed uppercut up the middle because he was able to read Michael Chandler's defense and figure out, okay, this guy's ducking when I'm throwing my lead hook. If I feint the hook, throw the uppercut, he's going to go right into it. Very smart by Justin Gaethje. Charles Oliveira, what was he able to do? This guy's dropping his hands, loading up, throwing a lot of overhands. If I just be technical down the middle, I'm going to be able to clip him with a hook. And guess what happened against Michael Chandler in that fight? Gets clipped and gets dropped. It It was so weird to me after Chandler's fight with Oliveira, because we had both predicted he was going to beat Dan Hooker, and we both predicted he was going to lose to Oliveira, and a bunch of people came after us, like, oh, there's no way you thought Michael Chandler was going to get knocked out. If you've watched him throughout his career, the only weakness in his game, and I truly mean the only weakness in his game, is his durability is not at like 10 out of 10. He doesn't have a glass chin. He's not a fighter who gives up in fights. He can just get hurt, though, and it'll be interesting to see if Tony Ferguson can hurt Michael Chandler, because Ferguson has really good punching power. I just don't feel like we've been able to see it a lot throughout his fights. There's some examples. Look at how he was able to jab up some of his opponents in the earlier stage of his career. Cowboy's a good example. It's just sustained damage throughout the fight. And even go to the Justin Gaethje matchup. He dropped Gaethje with a really nice uppercut in the second round of their fight. And I understand Tony Ferguson ate a lifetime's worth of damage in that matchup, but there were still some isolated instances where he was landing really big power shots on Justin Gaethje, and I think Gaethje's quite a bit more durable than Michael Chandler, so I do think there's a window where Ferguson hits Chandler with a big shot on the feet, maybe wobbles him and could submit him on the ground, but this fight stylistically is so much fun.
It's a weird one because, I mean, you talk about Michael Chandler, and what does he tend to do when he gets rocked? He tends to wrestle, and he gets really, really down and dirty with the wrestling, and for Tony Ferguson, if Ferguson's able to hurt Chandler and make Chandler the wrestler that we know he is, again, Division I All-American at the University of Missouri in 2009, well, then you're normally entering a world of hurt. Now, we saw Charles Oliveira completely negate that, and
he might be the best grappler we've ever seen.
Made Tony Ferguson, very, very defensive off his back. And then Beneil Dariush did that and turned it up a little bit. Like, it was so weird to see Tony Ferguson off his back, but not able to offer up any resistance to Dariush.
I think that's a great point. I guess this is the question I'm going to leave for you. Do you think Dariush is better or worse than Michael Chandler? And I know MMA math's hard to do, but still, Dariush and Chandler kind of fight in a similar manner. It's just Dariush doesn't have the crazy athleticism of Chandler. He's just a little bit steadier with everything that he does. So I guess for you, do you look at Beneil Dariush in the grand scheme of things as ahead of Chandler in the rankings? Or would you say they're very similar fighters based on their skill sets?
I mean, Dariush, rankings-wise, might be a little bit higher, but when I do look at it, if I stack their skills up, Dariush is an efficient striker. His striking defense is lacking, but Michael Chandler's kind of in the same spot in some of his fights. Wrestling-wise, Chandler obviously has the edge, but grappling jiu-jitsu-wise is definitely Dariush. Now, they do things differently. When Chandler ends up on the mat, he's trying to gain position over submission, position over everything, land some ground and pound. With Dariush, he's trying to lock in submissions. So it is different. They come in different sizes, different shapes, different packages, and again, for Michael Chandler, you don't need more than that picture to tell you that this is one of the more athletic guys you're going to find in this division. Now, for the guy representing St. Louis and then Nashville and then also at the same time Sanford MMA, a tough test, obviously, against Tony Ferguson. We look at the odds in this fight, though. Chandler opened at -155, and then that line got cooked. And he's a -411 favorite right now on Bodog, best fight odds. And then if you look at it for Tony Ferguson, open at +135, +310. I haven't looked at the Topology votes. Surprise to me, to us, as they are to you.
I think Chandler by 80%.
I think it's going to be over. And slightly over. So 822 total votes, 82% Chandler, 33% by decision, 61% by knockout. For the 18% that have Tony Ferguson, it's like a lifesaver popsicle. 35% by decision, 32% by submission, 27% by knockout. So Matt, I mean, things are split. This should be a 5-round fight, but it's not. It's 3 rounds, so that could favor one of two. We'll see. But what are you saying as far as the pick's concerned here?
I don't think we've ever talked enough about Tony Ferguson's ACL. And trust me, we probably talked too much about ACLs. But it feels like that's been something that's been completely glossed over.
Remember when he came back in 6 months after...
And he looked good against Anthony Pettis. But Anthony Pettis hadn't had a meaningful win in a long time up until that point. I know he beat Wonder Boy right after that fight, but still, that was Anthony Pettis kind of on his way out of the UFC. He was ranked 8th in the lightweight division at that time, so it wasn't still like people were thinking about Anthony Pettis as, oh, he could fight for the title at any day. It was a great fight by Ferguson, but I do feel like he has lost a step after that fight. And when you take into account the knee issues, and just a lot of the damage he's eaten throughout his last few fights. I know it's been in different ways with Oliveira and Dariush than it was against Gaethje, but still, he was the nail much more than he was the hammer in those two fights too. And that's the hard thing. There's a real argument out there that Tony Ferguson's lost his last, 11 rounds? And that's still a really hard position to be going into a fight against Michael Chandler like that, because even Chandler in his losses has still looked pretty darn good.
Won the first round against Gaethje, gets dropped after that, rallies a little bit, I have a hard time with this one because, again, for Ferguson to beat Chandler, could he go out there and submit Michael Chandler?
I don't think he can, honestly.
It's entirely possible. I don't see it happening. Could he go out there and rock Chandler? It's entirely possible.
Who is it who Chandler slammed, dislocated their arm, and immediately triangle choked?
My favorite guy, Brandon Gertz.
Okay, that's where I kind of disagree with you a little bit on Chandler's more position over submission. I think he can attack both in an equal manner. I do think his grappling is well-rounded enough to where, again, to predict he's going to submit Tony Ferguson is a crazy prediction. But I think he can handle his own in a lot of these grappling sequences on the mat. Again, I care way too much about Gaethje Yamauchi, but guess what? He fights very similar to Tony Ferguson. They're both very back jiu-jitsu oriented, and they're good rangy strikers. And Michael Chandler had a field day with Gaethje, so I think he can do the same against Ferguson.
We definitely did see Christoph Jotko play that game last week against the people can't see it, Gerald Mearshart, GM3, a prop from the show. But yeah, I have Michael Chandler in this matchup as well. Pains me to say it because everybody loves the Tony Ferguson fight, and I know we're probably going to get some hate in the comments section for not picking Tony Ferguson, but folks, let us know in the comments section who you have in this one.
Exactly, and if you do think Tony Ferguson's going to win, please try to set out a game plan, because I'm very curious, what is Tony Ferguson's best path to victory? He's a great striker, he is really good on the ground, but again, Chandler just seems to have the counter for a lot of the strengths of Ferguson, so I'm curious where you guys think Ferguson can excel in this matchup.
Big time opportunity for both of these guys. We have two title fights up at the top between Namajunas and Esparza, Oliveira and Gaethje that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.